Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of Arthur's Roundtable. Super happy to have Shay with us today. Full disclosure, Shay has agreed to tell a story with us, and we'll also be hearing from him in the new year about his business on the Family Office Insights webinar series. So you have that to look forward to as well. Really happy to have you, and thanks for doing this on what some would argue is a holiday. Really, thanks for fitting us in. We chatted a little bit before we hit the record button. And I'm so happy to hear that you, as I, have really enjoyed some family time. And I don't know if it's downtime because was a lot of activity, but it was certainly rewarding. So I'm glad to hear that you had the same type of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is supposed to be downtime, and I definitely try to take some time off and at least disconnect to some degree, but, of course, keep up with emails like everybody else does. But yeah, had a great time with the family over the holiday season, and, yeah, I mean, it's 4 o'clock on New Year's Eve, so it's still a work day for sure. I mean, we're ready to roll. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Always. So let's do this if it's okay with you. Let's start with your journey, but first give people a little context, really briefly, what you're doing now, and then let's talk about how you got there.
Sure, absolutely. I guess the best way to characterize myself at the moment is I'm an emerging venture capital manager. So I've run Founderville Fund One over the last 3 years. It's a micro fund, a $6.5 million pre-seed and seed fund, where we had a hyper local focus, primarily focused in upstate South Carolina, and with a sense of funding, pre-seed and seed software and vertical AI type companies. And I've been doing that for, like I said, 3 years, and I've had a great time with it. And I'm just kicking off Fund Two, and it will also be a small fund, Arthur. It'll be call it a 15, maybe $20 million fund. I want to keep it small intentionally. I love what I do. I love working with founders, and this is sort of my passion. I'm not trying to go raise institutional money and go build something huge. That's just in my career. That's not where I'm at, and just want to go, do the work and put in the reps and help create a lot of value and help founders build their companies. But it's like anybody. It's been a long journey. It, there was there was a lot to it. So happy to get into the backstory if you like.
Yeah, let's get that. So just appreciate that so people have an understanding of what you're up to, and then we can talk. Let's go ahead and go as far back as you like and tell
Yeah,
us how.
sure. So I'm live in the South. I'm here in Greenville, South Carolina. I was born in New Orleans and really have been in the South most of my life. I fortunately was able to grow up as a kid in Chicago. So back in the late '70s, early '80s, Walter Payton was playing for the Bears, and I
Nice.
was super fired up. Got to become a Bears fan at an early age. But my dad got transferred to Greenville, South Carolina. He was in the building materials business, and we moved to Greenville, South Carolina. So I've been here for 40 years, and love it here. I tell you, after I got out of high school, I went to military college. I went to the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina,
Serious
and
business. Yeah.
it was kind of, my parents said, "Look, you can go anywhere you want as long as it's the Citadel." So figured
It's
if they
kind
were
of
going to
like the
pay, I was
movie,
going to
right? You
go.
can't handle the truth. You're going here. Forget it, right?
Yeah, that was basically it. That was like, you can go anywhere you want. We're paying for Citadel. So I went there, and had a blast, man. I really loved it. And I found that I liked the military life and the discipline and just everything about the military, and being in ROTC and going through that process was such a blessing, and I learned a lot, and I take a lot of those lessons learned with me today. But I tell you, I got out of the Citadel and moved back to Greenville. Was super fortunate, man. I went to work for this telecommunications company. This is in the early '90s, and it was an employee-owned company. I was the 10th employee. My best friend started the same day as I. He also went to Citadel. So we were the 10th and the 11th employees. And this is back in
That
long
was back
distance.
when the Baby Bells broke up, right?
That's
Wasn't that?
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So this is a long distance telecommunications company. This is back when we were selling long distance phone service for 20 cents a minute.
Yeah,
Back when long distance was actually a business, but back then it was a $75 billion a year business.
I remember.
AT&T, yeah,
Yeah.
AT&T had a $75 billion a year long distance telecommunications business. Of course, MCI and Sprint, those companies were emerging and building multi-billion-dollar businesses. I went into sales and I was a complete, nincompoop. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was just kind of learn. And it was great because what I learned was essentially how to sell recurring revenue based businesses through a channel to the small to medium enterprise. Like I learned that. That's what that business did, and did that for 5 years within that company. And about the fourth year, had an opportunity to move into the M&A group. That company started doing some roll ups, and went to work for the guy that was running corporate development. And again, I was completely clueless and just basically doing what he said. And I was trying to be a sponge just to learn the M&A business. And that company grew wildly. And they started in 1989. I joined in 91. They sold in 1995 for $160 million, which at that point, 95, that was a lot of money. That was a
A
big
lot of
deal
money.
in a short period of time. And as I said, it was employee owned. And this is back in the day. You'll get a kick out of this. This is the back in the day when you could go to the bank and borrow like 25,000 on your signature.
On your
So
signature.
yeah, absolutely. So I went and I did two things after I graduated from college. One, I bought a car, which I greatly regret. And second, I got a loan to buy some stock from an employee at the company that needed to put their kid through college.
I needed some liquidity. Oh, that's a familiar story. Needed the
Sure.
liquidity.
They needed liquidity. I can understand that. And so I was able to buy some stock, and I got stock options and everything. And long story short, the company sold 95, and I got this windfall at 25 years old. It wasn't a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was a millionaire at 25 or anything. It was just, but it was a lot of money for me. And I remember thinking, well, that was easy. Like
Yeah,
we should
right.
do this.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We should do this again. So I ended up approaching the three founders and suggested that we start a venture capital fund focused on telecommunications services. And we did that. We raised a $9.5 million fund. They were the majority of the money, and then we invested in telecommunication services across the country, and did that from sort of 95, 96, 97 timeframe. And that was at the very beginning of the dot-com boom. And so our timing was good. We were lucky in that we got into some companies that were sort of going along with the dot-com. And about 2 years in, 2.5 years in, we're investing the last bit of the capital. And I went to my partner and I said, you know what? I really don't think venture capital is for me. Like this has been fun, but I want to start my own company. Like I want to start a real operating company, and ultimately did that and started a high speed broadband company in 1997 called Newvox Communications. And our timing was good. We were lucky in that internet was beginning. We were deploying capital across the Southeast region and providing high speed internet. And this is back, we were providing 1 meg of internet to businesses for $1,500 a month.
Can
That
you
was
believe that?
that was it was crazy.
I have
But that
2
company,
gig. I have, just so people understand, I mean, you can tell me better, I could be wrong, but I have 2 gig of fiber to my door for
sure.
$90 a month
Yeah.
in the wilderness.
It's
It's
absolutely
crazy.
nuts. The compression on that market was stunning, and that actually precipitated what we had to go through as we built this company out over the late 90s. And we built this company, and it was, what I view as a successful company. We were hiring a lot of people, creating a lot of value, raised a lot of money, spent a lot of time in New York in the late 90s, and raised literally hundreds of millions of dollars, both in debt and private equity or venture capital at the time. And found myself in filing for an IPO. And I was
Wow.
30 years old and couldn't believe that people were giving me that much money. What are y'all doing? Because I don't really understand what I'm doing other than I'm trying to build this business. But I did have a sense for again selling recurring revenue based services. into small to medium enterprise, and we were doing a pretty good job. And we filed for an IPO, Arthur, on April 14th, 2000, which is the third biggest one-day drop in the history of the Nasdaq. So that was the
Wow.
day we filed, and the market was blowing up at that point. It was I should say imploding,
Imploding, yeah.
and we were at that time we were burning about 4 million a month, and probably had about 6 months worth of capital left. So the IPO was not going to happen. DLJ was the lead at the time, and they came back to us that summer, and they were like, there's no way, man. You're like, you
Yeah.
got to find another alternative. And we ended up merging the company with a peer company that was building in the Midwest, and this company had just raised 200 million in equity from Goldman Sachs. So
Wow.
they had tons of capital, and we had a much larger business. We were up to, I don't know, 350, 400 people at the time, 40 or 50 million in revenues.
Wow.
So on
A
paper it
real
looked great.
business.
Yeah, it was a real business. I mean, we were just burning a lot of money to build out in a lot of capital expenditures, and buying gear, Cisco gear, Nortel networks, and caught up in all of the middle of that stuff. As I said, we ended up merging with this company, and I'll never forget, we there was a board meeting in the summer of 2001. So we had merged in late 2000, and in the board meeting in the summer of 2001, the board, and this was Goldman Sachs, Chase before it was JP Morgan, More Capital, which I think was the third largest hedge fund in the
Yeah,
world at the time.
yeah.
And I could go through the list. There, is a litany of sort of the who's who of sort of private equity, and the names that you would know. At any rate, they said, look, keep building out, keep growing, keep doing we've got all the money you need. Just keep going. So, at that point
Typical
I was
venture deal,
31.
right?
Typical venture deal. I was 31, I was married, I had 3 kids, and I'm thinking, "All right, we didn't get public, but this is fine. They've got plenty of capital. Let's just keep growing this thing." So we kept growing. We did exactly what they said, and we kept going. And then sometime in 2002, we needed to raise some more capital. And we had a board meeting, and I'll never forget, the chairman said, "So we're gonna essentially pass the hat for 50 million, but to do the 50 million, as we discussed, we're going to recapitalize the company."
You learned a new term, crush down round, right?
I learned it in a fierce way, and I he said, "We're going to do," and it was crazy. They went around the room. The guy from Goldman's in for 10, and Chase is in for 5, and Moore's in for 5. Everybody, and I'm like, "This is great, no problem." And then he mentioned the recapitalization, and he said, "To do that, we're going to facilitate a 1-for-100 reverse stock split." And at that point, I almost fainted. Like, I remember sitting there thinking, "This can't happen." And I broke out with a sweat. I thought I was going to throw up. And I said, wait a minute, hang on, hang on. Guys, the company's doing fine." And they said, "Shay, look at the market, look at the competitive local exchange market and the high speed broadband market and where WorldCom is and all these other things going on. The company is essentially bankrupt." And I was like, I, I can't, I simply can't believe this. So in that moment, of course, it had built over the years, but in that moment, I found myself, 31 and married with 3 kids and essentially bankrupt. I I did not know what I had taken everything I made off the venture fund, everything I'd made off the previous I rolled everything. There was no holdback of 10%. I went all in. So I had all my money in this company, and it was my identity. It was who I was, ego was wrapped up in it. And I found myself just essentially broken emotionally, mentally, and certainly financially. And it was,
Intense.
yeah, it was a devastating time. And of course I got mad and resigned.
Yeah, right.
I
So,
was going to teach him a lesson.
yeah, teach them a lesson, right? So, if you don't mind, a couple things. Uh, did At that point before the split and that meeting, how much of the company did you own?
When we filed for the IPO, my family, so myself, my brother who was there at the company, we were if we had gone public at the price talk price, we were sitting on around 100 million.
But you didn't have control of the company because of the
No,
shared. Yeah, right.
no. At that
So
point,
even
we
when
had
you
raised
walked
so
into
much
that board.
capital.
Yeah, yeah, when you walked into that board meeting, it didn't matter what your vote.
No, I no.
Yeah,
Oh, no, 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 no. And
yeah,
and I learned over time as I spoke up and got more vocal, it was simply easier for them to eliminate me.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then bring somebody new in and load that person up with stock options, and they were thrilled.
yeah,
And it was just sort of like weed out the characters that were going to cause problems. And I certainly qualified as one of those because I was so upset and felt just betrayed and everything else. So it was easier for them just to weed me out, which they slowly started to do. And I finally, and I finally resigned, and I had nothing to fall back on at that point. I was like, I just can't be a part of this anymore. It would, it's crazy, Arthur, because ultimately my co-founders and I, many of us barely got through that. 3 of my co-founders, including my best friend, killed themselves, through that
holy shit,
process. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The
holy shit,
C Yeah, yeah. One of the other C-level execs wound up in jail. It was an absolute, complete unraveling, and, it was just I barely hung on, man. Like, I
yeah,
barely hung on, and I think the only thing that kept it together was I maintained a good relationship with the senior management team of the company, not necessarily with the board. The board couldn't care less about me, probably didn't know my name other than being at a board meeting. But I knew that we as a company had a non-core asset down on the Gulf Coast, a subsidiary company that we had acquired that the company didn't want. And after I resigned, about 6 months later, I had nothing going on and I went back to the company and to the CFO and I said, "Would you guys consider selling this asset?" And he's like, "Yeah." I mean, at that point they were,
giving
skinning
it
down
away,
the
right?
company, getting
Yeah,
yeah, right. So I was able to buy that asset, another telecommunications like a subsidiary inside of the firm. Now, understand this was late 2002, early 2003. I had no money. I mean, I had no money. And I needed about 500,000 in equity to go buy the asset, and I had lined up a credit facility from a regional bank to buy the asset. So we ended up buying that asset. I had to go panhandle around Greenville and collected, I guess it was 400,000 now that I think about it, in equity to get that thing bought. It was a fixer upper and got that closed in 2003 and fix it up. It was when I bought it, there was about 120 employees. It was about 6 million in revenue. I sold it 5 years later at 15 million in revenue and about 75 employees. Sold it to a publicly held company and sold it on April 4th, 2008. So Bear Stearns was imploding, Lehman
yeah,
Brothers, it was,
wow,
and my credit facility was expiring on May 30. So I was like, this can't possibly happen to me again. Like, there's
right,
no way the gods are aligned for me to like lose it. And fortunately got it closed and it put me back on my feet. And I was like, you know what? I'm resilient and I'm definitely
clearly,
determined and I've gotten through this and I'm in a better spot. And that was man, I tell you, it was a sigh of relief, but also one of realization that it can go so fast,
real go the other way really quickly for a whole bunch of things that you don't see coming, which
completely out
is,
of control.
yeah, out of your control, which I'm wondering what the sentiment was at the time for. Maybe it was different for each one of your partners and you. Oftentimes, yeah, I've been New York. I'm a New Yorker, like been there for 25 years, right? And so I know a lot of the characters, and I also know there's people that will write something on a napkin and stick to it, and there's guys that are gonna do whatever they can to crush you down and take the spoils and run, right? I mean, there's people in between, but there's really two parts of the continuum, right? Did you and your partners think that you were getting fleeced at the beginning and that the New York finance community was gonna smoke you? And even though they were telling you, "Don't worry, there's plenty of money," was it in your view?
Maybe it was pure naivety and still clinging to the hopes that 1999 and 2000 were coming back. I don't think I could fully process that that was such a monumental crash and sea change that it wasn't coming back. And so I didn't think that. I really felt like this board and the investment community that was behind us was really behind us. And here's the thing, Arthur, that company, we sold that company sold for $625 million. And I, in the last venture capital in, they did fine. Like they
Yeah.
made plenty of money, but I walked away with nothing. And I wrote the business plan. I was the founder, CEO, deposited the first 250 grand and hired the employees. And I got nothing other than a headache. But
Well, pretty valuable lesson, right?
certainly a lesson for sure. And
Yeah.
it's some
It was pretty
experience I get to
painful.
carry forward. Very painful, no doubt. But I think that helped me with the second company when I got a fair offer. Instead of hiring an investment bank, I started negotiating with that company and ultimately sold and probably left money on the table. Like, probably left money on the table, but you know what? At that point, I was like, "I have to create liquidity. I've gotta get my investors their money back and make sure they make a good return," which they all did, and then I've gotta get settled, and ultimately that I accomplished that. So it's like, look, that goal was accomplished. I ended up that was a 5,000 employee publicly held company, and I made it about a year. I had an employment contract. I'm not cut out for a 5,000 person company. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
my nature. I'm sort of
Meetings and shit, right?
meetings and operational details, which is not my strength. But I stayed in touch with people from the previous company and had a great relationship with them, as I mentioned before. And I started approaching them and I said, look, we need to do something again. Like we got a great track record. Like, let's go do it again. Let's go do it again. And ultimately talked three of them into quitting their jobs and building another company. And when we did this, this was the summer of 2011, and didn't know what we were going to do other than we were going to sell recurring revenue based services through a channel into small to medium enterprises. Like, that was the plan. And of course, we understood telecommunications. So we decided to start with telecommunications and quickly evolved into cloud computing. And in early 2012, we were offering cloud infrastructure services to businesses. And this is before Amazon Web Services even articulated AWS inside of the financial statement.
Wow.
Was This is pre
Wow.
AWS. This was certainly pre Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. So we were really early to the market and built that company out over the following. I stayed through 2018 and built Green Cloud Technologies into a great company. We sold it to Tiger Infrastructure Partners in 2021. That was a good exit, and a lot of people in Greenville did well. And it was just a great company. It was cloud infrastructure at the right time in the right place, and I think
Was
we did a good job.
Oracle really your only competitor at the time?
At that time, our biggest competitor was a company that was providing disaster recovery services. They were very small and not very well known, and they grew super quickly and ultimately got acquired by Vista. Before Around 2013, 2014, we started to see AWS, we started to see Microsoft, we started to see Google. And it's funny because the investment community, I raised money for that company. And the investment community would ask me, like, how can you possibly compete with Amazon? And I'm like, look, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they're going to get 90% of the business. That leaves 10% of what's going to be a $100 billion a year market. Now it's a much larger market now. It's probably a four cloud infrastructure is probably 400 to 500 billion a year at this point. And I said, listen, we sell to small to medium enterprises. We're selling to the local HVAC company, the restaurants. They don't have a Amazon and AWS engineer. They have no idea how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it opened the door for us to provide a great sort of white glove service to the small enterprise and get them into the cloud in a way that kept us underneath the feet of the big elephants and allowed us as I learned to say, sort of dance between the toes of the elephant, right? We could build a
They
great
weren't
$30
interested in
million
it
dollar year
anyway.
business.
Yeah,
They didn't care. They didn't
yeah,
care. They were selling to enterprise. We were
yeah.
we were way below that, and it allowed us to slowly, well, rapidly, really grow a $30 million a year ARR business and generate 35% EBITDA margin. So it was a great business. Uh, I enjoyed that time and had a blast. Like I said, did that until 2018. I left the company in 2018, which is kind of funny. I was the founder and CEO and left my own company, and I think I've done that a couple of times. But I once it hits about 100 people and there's a lot of meetings, I start to lose some interest.
I I totally get
S-
it.
I started a company called U-Turn Health. I started doing volunteer work at a local nonprofit in Greenville where we were focused primarily on supporting families that were struggling with addiction. And got to know the CEO real well and started spending the time with the nonprofit. And what I noticed more than anything, Arthur, was the majority of the people coming into the door of the nonprofit were not the alcoholic or the addict. It was mom, dad, brother, sister, loved one, employer. It was the people that had lost control and were scared to death and were angry and worried and resentful and ashamed and all of these things, and they were trying to figure out how to fix their loved one.
Wow.
And what I
Yeah.
what I found in the nonprofit was the majority of the work that the nonprofit did was focused on the alcoholic. It was focused on the person with the problem or the one with the mental illness or the medical condition. And I said, "Gosh, Rich, why don't we create content and build something that supports the family? Because if the family gets better educated on the disease, they're going to be better able to support the loved one. And if they can support the loved one better, that loved one's going to have less anxiety and worry and fear, and they'll be less likely to relapse. On top of the fact, it's going to keep the family healthy. And if we can keep the family healthy and maintain some sense of just mental well-being, all of that benefits to the addict or the alcoholic. So that turned into a
And the
company.
family, like, even if the addict or the alcoholic spins out again, at least the family's got tools to know how to deal with it, right? I mean, does
Absolutely.
that make sense?
No, you're 100% on it. That's exactly that was the whole vision, which is how do we create video content with therapist-led, videos that allow the family to really learn about how to keep themselves well and how to support the loved one, maintaining appropriate boundaries, and then we create a coaching division, coaches with real world experience that struggle with addiction themselves. Me being one of them, I've struggled with alcoholism in my career. I'm sober, but that it's a passion play for me. I love this stuff and I love supporting families. And we learned that if we provide coaching along with video content, that people could get well. And that I tell you, man, it's the one company I'm proud of. Like I'm really proud of the work that we've done there because we've helped thousands of people. We do work in the Veterans Administration. We do work in jails and prisons across the country. We were awarded an $8.5 million grant from the Federal Bureau of Prisons to support prisoner reentry work to help keep them sober for a period of time as they get
Hey,
back
I
into
didn't know this.
society.
This is super
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's man, it's I merged that company with a private equity backed group in 2022, which led to the creation of the venture fund, but I'm still involved. It's my largest private investment. It's something I care deeply about. I think that, I have high expectations for the company and the company is doing well. It's a profitable company and growing. All that matters from that is the fact that we get to go do good work.
And so, if you don't mind, based on current events, there's exponential amounts of money being spent from states and governments to fund these type of things with no accountability and no metrics to demonstrate that the capital that's deployed, whether it's an NGO or you know what I'm talking about, the whole Minnesota
Sure,
thing
absolutely.
and the whole Doge thing discovered all the USAID. I mean, it's despicable
Absolutely.
what's happening there. We all knew it was happening. We just didn't know on what grand scale. How can you help us understand how you measure success in that company? Because It sounds to me like it might be a nonprofit, it might be for profit, it doesn't really matter, but you're a business person, and so you're not gonna just keep on throwing money if everybody's still addicted and the families are falling apart, right?
Yeah, no, no, you're absolutely right. It's a for-profit company, and I did that intentionally. I did not want to start a nonprofit. I
Getting
felt
painted
like
with a bad brush now, right?
right, right, but I felt like and of course, I when I founded it, I worried like, "Hey, is Shay gonna go try to profit off of addiction and services like that?" And that was not the case. What I understood fundamentally is, like, to go build this company and get coaches that have gone through the meat grinder of addiction and an hour sober and therapists and psychiatrists, that's gonna take money. Like, that I need to go raise capital and then use technology by delivering the video content across a worldwide platform. Do that. That's gonna require capital. That's why I did the for profit. Listen, whatever money we make off that, it's getting donated back to the nonprofit that I created this thing out of. This is not a money grab. This is me doing what I love. But at any rate, the answer to the question is it is hard, Arthur. It's
Yeah.
super hard to measure success other than taking 30-day increments in talking with the individual and finding out, are you sober? Are you going to your program? Are you in AA? Are you going to NA? Talking with the family. Part of it is just interaction. If the individual's engaging with you and they're having a phone call and they're talking, even if they're angry, it
Good
doesn't matter. That
sign.
means
It's a
it's a
good
good sign. It's a
yeah.
good sign. So for us, success was engagement. So what we measured more than anything else was engagement, both with the individual that was struggling and with the family. And if we kept them engaged, we had a chance. And that's all we were trying to do. Like we're not trying to, we're not curing addiction. Like that is not what U-turn was about. It's not possible. That's up to the individual to do on their own. But what we were was a bridge from chronic, just crazy issues in the family to some semblance of calm and peace that allowed the individual a chance to find sobriety, whatever sobriety looked like for them. So we would meet people where they were and try to help them and support them, whatever that looked like. And that can mean a lot of different things. It could mean, one individual saying, look, I want to get to where I'm drinking 2 beers a day. And it's like, okay, great, great. Let's get you to 2 beers a day, right? And then having a discussion the next week. How'd you do? How'd you do? It for somebody else, it could be complete abstinence, and it could be just a reduction in harm, what's called harm reduction, moving from heroin to marijuana use. And so this is a big gray area of money and grants and federal funds, is to your point. But it's work that's got to be done. It's work that's got to be done. And like I said, I think we're doing good work, and we're going to continue to try to do that.
So this is I don't think I've met a family who hasn't been touched by the ravages of addiction. Like
Mm.
everybody I know's got somebody in the family that's spiraled out, right? It's I think I'm right about this, but you tell me. When someone's addicted, the family suffers immensely, especially if they haven't dealt with it before. But addiction behavior is nothing else matters except what I'm doing next having to do with my addiction. And there's triggers and all that. I get it that people just go off the rails, but it's horrifying because an addiction personality is okay. All I really want to do is do that again. And I'll do anything it takes, especially with hard drugs, right? Whatever it takes to get the next fix, I'm doing it. And it doesn't matter that before all this, my family was important to me and most important thing. Screw that. I'm doing whatever I have to do. Right. Is that
It's
pretty much
no,
it?
you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's devastating for the family. And I look back in the years when I was in active alcoholism, and the damage I did to my children at the time will last a lifetime. I mean, my daughter ended up going to a college that is a Christian college that had a sober campus. She did that because of growing
That
up
sounds like
with
a
a
good outcome. Right.
it was a great outcome, but the reality is, like, my actions impacted her. But you're right, when an active addiction, and this could be whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gaming, gambling, which is just horrendous because
Oh, it's
it's
bad.
completely destructive.
Yeah.
But the when an active moment, the dopamine release in the individual is so strong and so overpowering that the frontal lobe shuts off. It is impossible to make a rational decision. You can't do it. And that's unfortunately a stage of addiction where you have to go get help. The only way to fix that is you have to go off and get help and get treatment to unwind what has happened with your brain. But it's a battle, dude. But I would listen, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, I learned so much about myself going through alcoholism and finding sobriety. And out of it came a great company that's doing good work right now today. And that fires me up. And I think it's given me, resilience and persistence and determination to do whatever I'm going to do and do it in the right way. I no longer, all I used to do is chase money and status and things. And I couldn't care less about any of that now. I got it. I've lost it. I've got it. It doesn't matter. It's empty. And the only thing I care about now is quality time with my family and the people I care about and I love and my health and my kids' health. Like that, everything else is kind of noise. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kind of noise.
yeah. It it
If I
it's
can
some
I can
it
operate that way, then I'm good to go.
yeah, totally. I mean, it takes a while, and also, I will say that if you've lost it, made it, lost it, at least you intuitively, you can do it again. So when people say it's not about, I'm not, this isn't directed towards you, it's not about the money. It usually is not about the money as long as you've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs in place, and then you
That's
can
right.
focus on like the family's the most important thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's
No,
really,
I think you're right on. I mean, I think about like the fund that I'm raising now, right? It's going to be call it a $15 million fund. That would put most venture capitalists to sleep, right? It's just like you can't make any money doing that. And the thing is, like, no, I can't make tons of money, but I can make a great living and I can do the things I want to do and I can give back to my community and I'll create wealth. There's wealth on the back end of that. No, it's not ridiculous money, but that's fine. That's
it's
not
totally
where I
fine.
am in my career. I'm good with
Totally fine.
that.
Yeah. It's when people ask me, because you know this, I'm mostly just a private investor, and the whole family office insights thing is just a beautiful byproduct of all that works. People often ask me, okay, so how about you writing us a check? And I want to talk about it in the context of what's interesting to me, just because it's a staged life thing like you are. I'm
Mhm.
not interested in being a passive investor in anything, right?
Yeah,
I've at this stage of my life, I've got the stuff settled that I don't have to worry. But the last thing I want to do is be a passive investor. This is just me. I want to be a
yeah,
control investor if I'm going to be an investor, right?
sure,
Because I only have 32 and a half more years, right?
right.
I'm not going to wait. Like I had 62 and a half more years, 30 years,
That's right. That's
right?
right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a shift of, I guess, focus for me in that I hit a point where I was like, I don't want to go start another tech company. It was like I don't want to start another cloud computing company or telecommunications company, but I want to stay engaged in the startup community, right? And how do I do that? And ultimately, what I did is in early 2022, right after I had merged U-Turn with the private equity group out of Dallas, I had approached the city of Greenville, the nonprofit that's in charge of entrepreneurship and innovation. I said, "Look, we need an accelerator program. These founders are struggling; they can't raise capital, like all the stuff that everybody knows about how hard it is." And I said, "Why don't we build a program?" And they said, "That's great, Shay, go do it.
Yeah, right. Good luck.
Good luck." That turned into a passion play because I was like, you know what? This needs to happen. So I raised 400,000 in nonprofit funds for the city with the condition that the city direct that money to build out this accelerator program for early stage tech startups. And we did that. And I helped run that program through 2022 and 2023. And then during that process, it just became obvious that I needed to raise a small venture fund to help fund some of these companies. And that's what I did with the first fund. I went around Greenville to my network, to people that invested with me in the past. Got 45 investors, raised $6.5 million. It's not
Nice.
much money, but you know what? We've deployed 4.5 million of it in 11 companies. We've created 60 jobs, and we're building right here. And I think now, with what I'm doing with the second fund, is I'm simply expanding the thesis across the state of South Carolina, or the Carolinas for that matter. I think there's just an enormous opportunity to put early stage capital to work here, because there's just not a lot of venture capital here. There's
And there's
plenty of
tons of,
capital in Atlanta or
yeah,
Raleigh, but when you
yeah.
come to South Carolina, it's a venture capital black hole, which for
But
me
they're
brings
smart,
opportunity.
innovative people.
Of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
We've had great companies come out of South Carolina and created enormous, just like my last company. I mean, if you can build a company from scratch and get it to 30 million in ARR and sell it to private equity, that's a lot of value creation. Guess who made all the money? Goldman Sachs, Spring Capital Partners, a family office out of Alabama. They made all the money. There was very little money that was made in South Carolina. And part of the thesis is like, look, if we can create value here and ultimately create liquidity, that's going to get reinvested in the ecosystem. And that's going to get this flywheel moving. And that is what we have to do here.
Totally. Tell me a little bit more about the process of helping the families and, if anything, what the audience can do to help that out.
In terms of U-Turn Health, the addiction company. So U-Turn Health is the name of the company. That's Youturn, U-Turn. The idea was like, you turn your life around.
Yeah.
And, I think the message for the family, Arthur, is more than anything, try to stay calm. Like, you've got to find a way to disconnect your personal fear, anger, resentment, worries from the individual that's struggling. And because the thing is, when somebody is in an active addiction, they are simply not thinking correctly. They can't, no matter what. The behavior is so illogical and makes no sense. And that is a sign that the frontal lobe is shut off. But for the family, it creates so much anger and worry and resentment that it overwhelms them. And, unfortunately, that's what creates these arguments and these fights and everything else. There's no one solution. There's no single solution. Some people hit some sort of bottom and figure it out on their own. Others, it takes a lot, unfortunately. And for a lot of people, it's going to take treatment, and maybe a lot of treatment. It just does. But there's certainly hope. And I have seen family after family after family go through a resurrection of happiness and love and sobriety in a way that is
Wow.
just unbelievably meaningful. And so it
That is
does
really
happen.
encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had a daughter who married the wrong guy, got hurt loading a truck, got on the oxy, and I mean, he completely shut off.
All right.
And I give my daughter a lot of credit because she got to the point saying, I love this guy, but I can't fix him. It's over. And so I've got a daughter, I'm out of here. Like, she actually didn't fall into the trap. Maybe it's not a trap, but as a father, I felt like it was a potential trap of her saying, I'm going to try to fix this person and hang in with him because I love him and I'm going to try to get him to sobriety. She just said, that's it. He's demonstrated that he doesn't want to help himself. And maybe because the frontal lobe was shut off, because the oxy stuff's just, you know how bad that is. Right.
Sure, sure.
But
Good.
she
I mean,
bailed, and
good for
he's
her.
still, yeah, she bailed, and he's still sleeping in his car as far as we can tell.
God,
Yeah,
it's horrible. I mean, good for her to have the self-realization and the courage to say, that's it, like, I can't do it anymore. And she had your granddaughter, who was obviously so important to you, and her daughter that she had to care for. So until you have gone through it personally, which you have, it is so hard to even understand the level of emotion that goes through that whole thing, from fear and worry to uncertainty. And there's so much shame and uncertainty tied into that disease that it's devastating. I've lost, it's countless now. I mean, I can't count on two hands the amount of people, friends that I've lost to overdoses and suicides due directly to addiction is I was went through my period and then and then have stayed in touch with people and stayed in, and maintained contact in groups. It's horrifying, man. It really is. I mean, it is a scourge on society, and it hurts so many people that don't deserve it.
Have you had any I've had some recent experience with people who unintentionally were subject to exposure to what's the drug that Trump's blowing all the boats up
Fentanyl,
for? Fentanyl.
fentanyl.
And unintentional, I mean, they were doing drugs, but they put the coke in the little plastic bag in their front pocket against their leg, and there was so much fentanyl in it that it killed them,
Yeah,
right?
sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's one example. I've had a couple of people that I know that have been exposed to that and died as a result. What's going on with that in your view, and how's that relate to what you're doing in the drug addiction, alcohol addiction family?
Yeah, I think at a high level, it's pure business for the cartels. It's the gross margins are greater with fentanyl. I mean, it's that simple. They can buy it, produce it, make it, and transport it cheaper. The gross margins on that drug are enormous versus heroin, and it takes less. So the quantity that needs to be transported is easier to hide. It's I hate to say it, it's just business, right? But I
Economics.
think yeah, you know, it's economics. It's unit economics for these guys. But I think it's an opioid. So it's what we have found, what I have found is the majority of the individuals that get hooked on fentanyl are looking for heroin. And it usually starts as heroin and they can't find clean heroin and they get to fentanyl or the heroin has fentanyl in it. And a lot of times that's what causes the overdose and the death. If you're used to doing a certain amount of heroin and you know how much you're going to shoot up, like if you know, just take the average the drug addict in your vision in San Francisco, they know how much heroin they need to shoot up. But if they buy some heroin that's adulterated with some fentanyl and they shoot up the same amount, they're going to die.
Yeah, wow.
They're just going to die. So it's bad drugs. It's, you know, this is completely unregulated, clearly. So they can cut it with whatever they cut it with, the dealers, the manufacturers. So it's although, you know, I've seen people, I've met people, I know people, doctors typically, that are hooked on fentanyl instead of heroin because they have access to fentanyl.
Yeah, and
Nurses,
fentanyl has a legitimate use, like,
absolutely, absolutely.
it's actually a good drug, it
It's a
properly
great
used.
drug. If you and I break our leg on a skiing accident, we're gonna want some.
Yeah,
We're gonna
exactly.
want that to make sure we don't feel the pain. But yeah, it's fortunately the overdose deaths. You know, maybe they've peaked and they're starting to come down. And I don't know what regulations need to happen. You know, I won't get on my soapbox about laws and everything else because I've got a lot of opinions there that are sort of irrelevant. But I think that, you know, there at least there's been a focus on it now, and a lot of people care, and a lot of people want to address this issue. And to your point earlier, there's not a family out there that has not been impacted. If there's a family who has not been touched by addiction, they are in the clear minority because the huge majority of America has a loved one that has struggled with addiction in the last 12 months. And let me tell you something, you know, if 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 your 17-year-old daughter hasn't been home in 2 days and she's hooked up on opioids, it impacts you.
No shit.
It swallows the family. It
Yeah,
swallows the family. So, you know,
can't think
it's
about anything else.
there's nothing else to think about. It's the
Yeah,
only it consumes everything. So you've got the daughter who's struggling, who's out of her mind, and then you've got the family that is literally distraught that whether they're going to work or not, all they're thinking about is the daughter and how to fix the issue, and they can't fix it. And
yeah.
that's what makes it so scary because there's simply no band-aid to put on this wound to make it better. It is a process that takes a lot of time.
Is there a way that if the audience has been affected by this, and they can donate to the nonprofit, is that helpful to you?
Absolutely. We have a nonprofit called Favor, FAVOR. It's a national nonprofit, Faces and Voices of Recovery. It's favorgreenville.org, I believe is the website. And, you know, it's a fabulous nonprofit and we're doing great work locally. But Favor National is a great national nonprofit that does work, really does a lot of work with the families. And that's again, that's been my focus more than anything else, Arthur, is like how do we help the family and get the family through this meat grinder of addiction?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So let's move to the a little bit about the venture fund. I think you said 11 companies, 6 million bucks,
Yep.
and now you're moving to raise the next 15. Is
Yep.
it going to be like 20 companies? Same idea?
Yeah, similar idea. 20 companies over 3 years, pre seed and seed, B2B software, vertical AI, focused in the Carolinas, primarily in South Carolina. I really like the idea of working, as I say, belly to belly, eye to eye with the founders. I like to be in front of the founders. I'm not passive money, I'm active money. And it's not because I'm smart, it's because I've got experience. And, what I try to tell the founders is look, I've stepped into all the potholes. If there's a mistake, I probably made it. And let me help you not make that mistake. So a lot of my time is spent with the founders interviewing potential employees, working with potential employees, and helping go to market strategies at the earliest stages. That's where I spend a lot of time. I think I'm good at it. It's what I like to do. And I also know just those first 5 employees are crucial. It's one thing to make a mistake on your 50th employee. If you make a mistake on your 5th, it could be catastrophic.
Yeah, totally makes
It's like,
sense.
I mean, it's just you just don't know, and if you've never been through it, if you're a first-time founder, if you're 35 years old and you've never really done that, you need help, you need coaching. So I try to provide support, my partner and I do, around that. But we think, look, I think South Carolina is underserved in terms of venture capital. That allows me to see all the deals. I get deal flow in a way that's unusual because all of the economic development organizations across the state know of us and send the best startups to us. So we see plenty of
That's
deals.
awesome.
And we don't back solo founders and we don't do pre-revenue companies. So we've got our box. You've got to be software, you have to have B2B, you have to have at least 2 co-founders, you got to be full-time, and you have to have real customers with real revenue. And if you have that, then we can talk. And, and I meet with founders all the time, and sometimes it's not a fit. And of course, I say no well more than I say yes, right? But the first portfolio, we're doing really well. We've got some great companies and some standouts, and I'm excited about the second portfolio and looking forward to putting that money to work across this beautiful state of South Carolina.
So are they expected to go through the accelerator or is it just an additional thing?
It's an additional opportunity for them. The thing is, I like to back the companies that go through the accelerator because I get to spend time with them. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm watching them from day 1 in the accelerator and all the way through the process. I'm also one of the ones helping teach them through the accelerator program. And a lot of what we're doing in the accelerator is how do you tell a story? Like
Yeah.
teaching them to tell the story and to learn to do the pitch. And then part of it is like, how do you build the business? Thinking about culture and leadership and compensation and go to market and all of these things that are so important that if you've never done it, you're just not going to know it or you're going to make mistakes along the way. So I learn a lot through the accelerator programs, whether it's in Greenville or Charleston or Columbia. That's where I learn the most about the founders. And that's what I like to back.
Yeah. Been talking a lot about this lately, but it's always been something that I felt was really important. Not because I'm a great storyteller, but because I'm a good listener. And I've been telling people for years that you could have the best team, the best idea, the best financing, but if you suck at telling the story, you're out.
There's no chance. And that's it because the telling of the story, I think so many founders think telling the story is about doing the pitch to raise capital.
Right.
And what I tell them is like, that's only one piece of it. You have to be able to tell the story to recruit employees, to go get customers. If you can't tell the story to everybody and then those individuals also tell the story because they get so impassioned about it, then you're not going to win. So to me, that's it. It's being able to tell the story about the company, but then it's giving them the confidence to sell themselves so that they can hire the very best employees. That's what the best storytellers do. That's what the best CEOs can do.
Yeah. And as it relates to, and I've seen this so many times, as you know, have lots of really good family offices that are members and many that we know well in Family Office Insights, and many that deploy capital in a meaningful way. And in almost every case, there had to be certain things that align. But if somebody couldn't tell the story well, it just it was over. It over before it even started, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's and it look, it's there's a science to it. I mean, there's a way to tell a story. I mean, there's books that are written about it, and I think I coach founders, go read the book Story Brand. I mean, Story Brand is a great one to learn to tell the story, to understand how to make somebody the champion and have the villain and have all the characters act, and there's a way to do it, and it's super important. But, you know, that's one way to measure the founders. But for me, ultimately the founders, it's about attitude, aptitude, humility, and coachability. If they're not humble, if they're
Yeah.
not humble, there's nothing to talk about because they're not going to listen. They're not going to pay attention. They obviously have to be smart and they have to have the right attitude. But I like scrappy, hungry founders that have had a tough childhood. High school athletes, college athletes, people that have gone through
Military,
addiction, military, things like that. That's what I love. I mean, I love the underdog. I'm not running around Harvard or Y Combinator trying to find the best founders.
right?
That's not what I'm doing. I want to find the folks that are scrappy and that have built something on their own and that are all in. And if I can find those and they're humble and they've got the right attitude, then there's a good chance I'm going to back them.
That's that's really good to hear. We're all a product of our life experiences. For me, I've always appreciated the person who was running through walls because that's what I've always had to run through walls. It's like, oh yeah, watch this.
Yeah. Tell me no and see what happens.
Yeah, right.
Lord, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So
No, you're right.
thanks for doing this. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
I'm not sure we have a date, but we'll let everybody know when you're coming on to tell the story more in detail
Okay.
about the fun. And I super appreciate you spending New Year's Eve day with me here for a little bit and
No,
sharing
it's
it with
been great.
yeah.
I
Super.
appreciate it, Arthur. This has been fun and appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share the story and tell it. It's always fun and brings back memories.
Yeah, it's a great story. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
All
it.
right.
All right.
Hey, thank you, Shay.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year, man. Have a great night. Yeah. Have a great New Year day tomorrow. Okay. See you.
Thanks
Bye.
everybody for being here.